How you doing? So we now know King Groot is getting a buff. So first of all, what do I think about his buff? I think his buff is gonna be very good. Probably the best tune-up buff Kabam has ever done in the MCOC game. Period. You could say it's a moderate slash tune-up, but even if it was a moderate, it's even. I think it's probably the best tune-up moderate buff in the game so far. The only buff that's better than King Root is Diablo's Red Magneto and Colossus. That's it. So he's like overall the fourth best buff ever that Kabam has ever done. And as far as tune up or moderate buff, he's the best overall in the game. So King Root, pre buff. Um, Best part about him, his ability to regenerate. You know, he can hit. He doesn't hit very hard at all. That's probably his biggest downfall. But when you look at his buff, just to give you a rough idea, they increase his attack value. Not only they increase his attack value, they give him like extra utility as well. So that's why I think he's going to be very good. Arguably, he could be the best champion for beginners. I still think if you have access to liquid courage and willpower as a beginner, I think Diablo is the best option for beginners. But if you don't, I think King Root will be your best option if you don't have if you don't have access to those masteries. I did think that there's cons about him that compared to Diablo. I mean, King Root, he relies a lot on his synergies to get extra damage, and you want him to be for him to be a tank. You want him awaken and preferably has high sig, if not max sig. So for him to be actually be really for his signature abilities, like you really want him to be awakened and preferably have high sig. So if you want to, take him up to as a 5-star or even a 6-star, you really need to get him to high sig, which most people don't have access to. So that's the only cons about him. He relies a lot on synergies, and you want him to be awakened and high sig. That's probably the only thing I would say. Other than that, if you have that ability, he's gonna be a very, very good champion for your roster. I think at 6-star rank 3 max sig buff, King Root, he's gonna do some serious damage, and he's gonna be a tank, especially if you have him as a 6-star rank 4 in the future. Man, he's not the hardest cosmic champion in the game, hardest hitting cosmic champion in the game, even if you look at his buff. But I think he's gonna be one of the hardest cosmic hitting champion in the game, perhaps with synergies, I would say. But mostly because he's gonna be a tank, dude. He's just gonna be like a tank if you have him as a 6-star rank 4 max sig, or even a 6-star rank 3 max sig. He's gonna be a tank, in my opinion. So, and I think it's gonna be good for beginners as well. So as long as you have an awaken and max sig. So let's look at his buff. So they pretty much give him extra attack, as I mentioned, and more utilities. So what did they give him as extra utilities? So now, when you look at his abilities, he's not only immune to a bleed, he's now immune to power drain and power burn. So this would be great counter to Guillotine 2099 and most tech champions. I do not like the fact that it's he'll be gonna be difficult on defense. I wish that this his immunity doesn't apply to mystics, because you're really not gonna bring Groot against mystic champions. I guess it's good if you don't have any else to use to go up against mystic champions, but ideally you don't want to use Groot for against mystic champions. So I really would have preferred that his immunity was not to power drain and power burn was not against mystic champions, because defense is gonna be really hard to beat. I think that's the only downside about that. But let's just look at the other things that he has. So they give him a minor bonus when it comes to his Fury instead of, I believe, 484 for his attack rating. So let's look at it. So 5. So these are 5-star rank 5. When Kabam does their buffs, they're always 5-star rank 5, not 6 stars. So let's look at the 484, as you can see, for 12 seconds pre-buff. Not only that, when you look at pre-buff, when he's on, it's the cooldown lasts 16 seconds, and you have only had 9% chance to gain a Fury buff. So 9% pure chance to Fury buff during cooldown, and it's last 16 seconds. And when its cooldown ends, you gain 2 Fury buffs. So when you look at his buff, it lasts 13 seconds in its Fury buffs. But now, instead of starting with 2, you start with 3 Fury buffs. And not only that, you gain up to 100% Fury buff potency after 100 seconds. So that's pretty much more than double what he currently has right now. So he's going to be hitting like a truck. And so they reduced the cooldown to 13 seconds instead of 16. I think that's good for overall. I think that's good because you're gonna trigger regeneration more, because every time you're in cooldown, you're gonna be regenerating, and when you're in cooldown, you don't have access to your Furies. In this case, you have more time access on your Furies, and you have more chances to gain a regeneration buff. So in this case, it's every pre-buffed, it was every 28 seconds. Now it's every 26 seconds, where you can gain every rotation to gain a regeneration buff. So they kind of like a small upgrade when it comes to this regeneration, and I think overall it's better for his regeneration and for his Fury buffs. And the 100% Fury potency after 100 seconds, that's going to be really, really strong. He's going to start hitting like a truck after 100 seconds, especially when you inflict the armor breaks on the opponent. So instead of a 9% chance to gain a Fury buff during cooldown, it's 20% chance to gain a Fury buff. And then if your opponents evade or block, auto block, or miss during cooldown, that's going to give him an extra 2 Fury charges, cooldown of 3 seconds. So that's going to give him more Furies. So heavy attacks now can pause poison debuffs as well as armor breaks. Special 1 attack is also another great buff they did. Instead of inflicting 1 armor break with a 90% chance, you're gonna inflict 3 armor breaks with a 100% chance. That's gonna make it so much faster for him to like start hitting like a truck, to ramp him up to get to that maximum max 10 stacks. It's max 10 instead of 9. I would have preferred it to be at least 20. I mean, it's not gonna be game breaker if it was max stack 20 instead of 10. I mean, it is still an upgrade from 9 to 10, I guess, but it would have been nicer if it was higher than 10. Maybe 15 is reasonable. I mean, definitely would be not like game breaking. Another thing that they did is, for each armor break, they reduced the armor above potency by 10%. So this is great counter for like somebody who has thick armor that's not immune to armor break. So this would be very helpful. So he's gonna be hitting, like, once you spam those special 1 attacks, once you got 10 max armor breaks on the opponent, and then you got the Furies going, he's gonna hit like a truck. Special attack 2 is pretty much, he now deals damage, direct damage, and against robots it's gonna be triple that damage, direct damage. So the good thing about King Groot compared to Diablo is he doesn't necessarily have to rely on his poison to do damage. He can rely on his armor breaks and his Fury buffs, and most importantly, against robots, he has class advantage, King Groot, and he's gonna be they are immune to poison, but then when you throw a special 2, not only has class advantage, because robots are tech, with the exception of Dragon Man, he's gonna have class advantage, and he's gonna be doing triple the damage on his caustic breath against robots. So he's gonna hit pretty hard against, you know, um, robots, even though they're immune to poison. So it's gonna do some serious damage, and his special 3 is pretty much the same. Um, when it comes to his max sig ability, signature ability, you really want him to be awakened and preferably high sig, because um, that's where he gets his regeneration from, and that's where he gets his, really becomes his, like, why you want to get King Root, because of his, because that was because he becomes a tank. Also, they added another cool thing, is instead of, if somebody throws a heal block on you, his regeneration buff is paused until the heal block is gone. So there are some nodes where there's just like, you can't gain what do you call this, heal blocks. You can't gain regeneration, so he's gonna be paused the entire time, but it doesn't mean like he's gonna be losing that. I guess that's a good counter, I guess you would say, for like Punisher 99. So that's a good plus. So they give him extra utilities, and also in his signature ability, they give him an extra 100% poison duration after 100 seconds. So that's definitely going to increase his attack damage. And obviously the same thing for his regeneration. Instead of every 16 seconds, it's to regenerate 7,572 health, it's every 13 seconds. So he's going to be regenerating more, or regenerating the same amount but with less time. So technically you're regenerating more per second. So that's also a big plus, I think, for him. So he does rely a lot on his synergy, and he has one good synergy is with King Root, with Crossbones. So he's gonna be like, gains an additional fury buff, and the chance to gain a fury buff chances during cooldown is increased by flat 10%. That's really nice. So instead of starting with 3, you're gonna have like 4 every time you hit the malice, activate the malice, when you're off cooldown. That's really a lot for King Root. And then plus, when you're on during cooldown, it increases the chances of him gaining charges from his fury buff by an extra 10%. So he's gonna be really hitting like a truck with his synergy. He does rely on synergy to get his damage output, but if once you do have him fully synergized, he's gonna only hit like a truck. He's gonna have ability to regenerate, which makes him a tank. And also he can shrug up divas, which is also a plus, I think. So he has a lot of things going on for him. So I think his buff is going to be really good. Arguably the second best buff in 2021, in my opinion. The only buff better than him in 2021 is Diablo, but Diablo got a what do you call that, overhaul. This is just a tune-up, and definitely the best tune-up ever by MCOC, by Kabam. So this is a really good buff in my opinion. I'll be taking my King Root to rank 5 as a 5-star, and if I can get him to max sig, I will do that as well. Thank you.